Welcome, traders. So it is Sunday, 12th of March. I'm recording this for the week commencing Monday, the 13th of March, 2023. And just having a quick look at the economic calendar for the week ahead. We have got predominantly, don't forget, by the way, very important, the US have moved their clocks, adjusted their clocks. So they're ahead by an hour for just for a couple of weeks, and then the UK will switch ours up at the end of the month. So we've got US dollar news on Tuesday, CPI data, excuse me. Wednesday, we have a whole bucket load of different things here as well. So they're called PPI retail sales. The focus will be really on retail sales, manufacturing, to see if there's any slowing or speeding up there. If we're gonna, if we're gonna have that recession, if it's gonna be a hard landing or a soft landing. In the UK, of course, there's not too much this week that I'm too concerned about at this time. I would say for Australia, there'll be an unemployment thing. We'll see if there's anything that needs to be, if there's any concern of a recession in Australia. And of course, Euro, I would say, certainly on Thursday, monetary policy statement at the press conference is going to create a lot of volatility in the markets. And that's really it. So those are going to be the areas where the news that was there. Obviously, we've got, and I'm just going to talk about it in a moment, the Silicon Valley Bank has created a bit of a potential problem in the markets. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, so otherwise, these will be the areas where I'd expect to see some increased volatility in the markets. So just, it's definitely worth investigating or exploring a little bit further on your own with regards to SVB. But yeah, I think at the moment there was some fear of contagion with that, and it looks like they're not going to bail them out, which I think is a good thing, trying to effectively what would it be, cauterize the wound. It's obviously a large amount, but also sounds like in part it was avoidable to a degree, and it shouldn't have been the bank should have known better than this. So, but it is at the same time, this is the kind of thing that triggered the 2007-2009 global financial crisis. So just pay attention to it. I think I would YouTube and find a little bit more about it. I know that there were some regulations that were rolled back under Trump, as well as the same ones that caused the derailing in some of the trains. There were regulations rolled back that, the question is, would they specifically have saved it, or are we just kind of pointing fingers here? But yeah, have a read into it. It's worth being aware of, because this could turn out to be a close call, or it could turn out to be a big thing. So just some awareness on that. Right, let's go to the charts and talk about what's going on in the markets. Something else that I wanted to say, there were a lot of you, so many of you have commented. We did the show on Friday. It was an enormous success. It was great fun, and it was an enormous success. The room was packed all the way through, but I got so many messages from you saying, look, I really wish I could have made it. I really enjoy this stuff, and I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you. Thank you for telling me, because some of you I've only heard from for the first time. Some of you I know, you're regulars, and I really appreciated very much getting that feedback. It means a lot to me. And I do hope at some point I'll be able to potentially do an online version of this, and then all of you will be able to attend. Okay, that would be, and I would do this for you. And hopefully you would really enjoy it. Okay, so that being said, it was just a big thank you from me to you. So all of you who've sent me those messages, thank you very much. Okay, look at this. Look at the volatility spike from last week. You know that this is to do with SVB. That's the Silicon Valley Bank. You know that that's why it is. It's just crazy. A little bit of that on Friday. We could see that coming up. And so, yes, if we're going to go through a similar experience to the global financial crisis, 2007 to 2009, this is where I'd be looking to see if that's going to happen. So let's watch the space and see what happens with it. Then let's look at that dollar index. You can see we had a bit of a gap down, a bit of a bearish day. And look at it here on the weekend, it's a bearish engulfing candle. But it's weird, it's not a very bearish close. It closed actually above that level of support. And that's why I kind of say that we could see it recover and go. But this uptrend is broken. So now we're potentially in a range. We have to wait to see what the market is going to do next. We have to wait and see. So that means going into this week, exercising some caution. Monday could swing the other way. That can sometimes happen. A Friday, people have time to think. The market has time to think on the weekend, and then it changes its mind, and Monday opens and it just bolts out the door. Euro dollar here also stuck within this range. I mean, that's a very kind of neat range on the daily. It's got to battle a level of resistance. So let's see what happens this week. This is a rare situation where I can talk about what the week looks like it's going to do, but honestly, it would be better to be prepared for multiple potential outcomes here. Based off this, I kind of think that there's a possibility we're going to see a weaker dollar continue. But what's odd about that is I would expect a stronger dollar if there was a bit of a run, if there was a bit of fear. I'd expect a stronger dollar. So that's why I say that. Let's have a look at sterling. So sterling had a big spike on Friday. That looks good. You can see a little bit of a bounce there on the weekly. You can see it breaking to the downside there. We've got, it's choppy. In other words, where I was talking about the possibility of that dollar coming back, so let's go back to the dollar index, where here we've had a strong trend. We've pulled back, bullish candle, we've broken the high, and I would expect it to continue onwards. It's really struggling to do that. So that's where the problem is. This choppiness it's all tied together. Okay, now let's go carry on. So let's go back to this. Sorry, Kiwi dollar downtrend, but a bit of a boost there. Right now, I would expect this to probably stay sideways or continue down. That Kiwi's not looking super strong there. Dollar yen as well had its uptrend broken, so I was looking for a pullback to this point. But yes, is it possible that we could get a bullish candle here and then resume? Yes, it is possible, but we're getting mixed signals here. It looks a little bit more bearish than bullish. We really are getting that. I'm going to look at these levels. What I think this is what I do, is the sensible approach at this point is we've got an outside candle on most of these major charts. The best thing to do for me is monitor the market. If it breaks the high, we're going to see it continue to the upside. If it breaks the low, we're going to see it continue further down. So basically, the high and low of last week is the approach that I would take. Monitor the high and low of last week, and when we break it, then I'll look to follow through on that. Look at dollar Swissy taking a hit to the downside, and dollar CAD taking a boost to the upside. So look at that. That has pulled back and is continuing to the upside. So that's interesting to me. It means possibly have a look at CAD pairs to see if there's opportunities in line with it. It is now overextended. I'd love to see a bit of a pullback into this area and find support and continue onwards, but it's looking good. Okay, it's nice little level of support, double bottom within an uptrend. Looks pretty good there. Gartley patterns often talk about this being a butterfly pattern. Would say that it comes up to this area and then potentially reverses. We're just going to have to see how that's going to be the case. Let's have a look at the ruble, just dying slowly but surely in this kind of area. Hasn't really done much. And EURUSD, that was a big move. Look at that. We could see a really big move there. Downtrend to the downside there. We can see it pulling back in here, closing near the lows. This implies, yes, we've connected with parity a couple of times. Strong rejection there. Now looks as though it's going to continue down. So I think for me this coming week, EURUSD, I'd expect that to go lower. The reason EURUSD is on this list was because of parity. That's the only reason I was it's not always going to be here. It was just because it broke below parity or was coming back up to it, and I wanted to see if it would get above it or not. All right, let's move on to gold, and let's carry on from there. Okay, so gold had a big day. This double bottom looks really good. We were looking for a pullback into this area. It just never wants to get touch 1800. Looks really good. A really nice bullish continuation candle there on the weekly. So for now, my expectation is that this will continue upwards, which means gold sits on my watch list. Any kind of pullbacks into this high here, I'll watch and see what happens in this area. If there's a bit of exhaustion, I'd exercise some caution in there. But absolutely, I think any nice pullbacks into this kind of area would provide some good continuations on the lower time frames. Silver is still within a downtrend. So really for me with silver, it's going to see how if we can get it to break above these previous highs here. So that trend is still intact. Let's have a look at copper. Copper is just going largely sideways, not much clarity there. And we have natural gas. So I was looking for a change in trend here. We've broken the previous highs here. That downtrend is now sort of not done that. That downtrend is now finished, but still looks quite bearish here on the weekly. My expectation for this here is probably to see it bob around in this area, possibly double bottom, but it's still bullish. And so this implies we're likely to see the market push up a little bit higher. So we let's just adjust this to something like that. And potentially just to see if we get a bit of a reversal up this week, if that's going to be the case. Okay, crude oil. Okay, so crude oil largely sideways. Look at that, nothing for about 6 weeks. Bit of a bullish candle here. I'm curious to see if that's going to result in a push to the upside. So I'm just going to mark that candle, just mark that, and see if we get that push up from that one there. What's Brent looking like? So Brent also got that. So let's just move these away from here. They get a bit boring, and see if that ends up being the push up from here. But that is a fair possibility. And also this channel is just messing this chart up. That can definitely be gone. We can get rid of that. So we're sideways right now, and we should be pushing back up from that. Moving on to other commodities, look at wheat just kind of falling through. So I want to talk about this just quickly because this showed a very similar pattern to what I've kind of spoken about with natural gas. Nice little triple bottom. It attempted to change in trend, and then it just worked its way back down into this trend. And now it looks as though it's going to do a retracement back up into this area. So now my expectation, at least in the shorter term, man, is to, let me just clean this up quickly. There we go. Clean it up, excuse me, a little bit of a pullback into this area, find some resistance in this area, potentially look for a continuation to the downside there. This can go as well. We don't need that anymore. So this is where we're at currently with that. Then we have got coffee. Nice little pullback. There we go. This is still potentially in play. We've got a nice pullback into this area. Bit of a bullish candle there. Be interesting to me if that bullish candle becomes the trigger candle for the move to the upside. Let's see if that's going to be the case. We have sugar continuing to look nice and bullish here. Bit of a you can see what's sort of a megaphone pattern. We can see it widening up there. It's going to break out obviously to the upside or the downside there. I'm thinking it's likely to push to the upside there, so let's see how that turns out. Cotton, wow, just falling right through this. So this was a bullish build-up pattern that I've been looking at. We fell through it back here. Then we produced a lower high and we're completely out of it here. So that is absolutely done. There's nothing that is going to break through at this point. That bullish breakout pattern is done. Now I would potentially be looking for moves to the downside. Very bearish move there. I would now possibly then be looking for trend continuations to the downside. Okay, moving on to the global indices. Very strong bearish finish to the downside there. Nice big weekly bearish engulfing candle. Continuation, break below that to the downside makes a lot of sense. Might be looking for some small pullbacks, but continuing to the downside for now. It's such a big bearish engulfing candle. Same thing here. I'd be looking for these. This week I was curious. We had an uptrend at that point. Technically, we still do. We've got a low and a high, higher low, higher high, and a higher low at this point. But I think we're likely to fall through this area. And I think we're likely to come back down to test these previous lows as well as potentially head lower down to levels of support. I think the same is going to be the case with Nasdaq. I'll just clean all this stuff up for next week. Bearish engulfing candles, ladies and gentlemen, not a strong sign for the market. Downtrends on the daily. I'm looking for continuations to the downside. So Russell, especially look at that very, very big. Makes kind of sense. There might have been some startups listed in that. Not looking too good potentially if they were listed or not. But anyway, I'm looking for these breakouts to the downside. Still an uptrend, but I think we're likely to retest this level if nothing else. And if we break below it, then the game starts to change. Looking at the FTSE, so the FTSE had a lower high and a gap to the downside here. We're still in an uptrend on the weekly. And I would still love for us to come back to this level and test this level of resistance for support. So moves lower also make sense at that on the FTSE. The DAX struggling in this area, not in a necessarily a really bad way, but it's definitely range bound at this point in time, and I want to see it ultimately choose a direction. It could, again, also similar to some of the others, it hasn't gone anywhere for 6 or 7 weeks, potentially come back down here to test that for support. And the ASX in Australia, big bearish finish, bearish candle. It's a bit of a shock to the system, and so it's more likely that there'll be a follow through this week. It's not guaranteed, but it's more likely. It's not just that it was a bearish reaction, it was a bearish engulfing across multiple asset classes, and that is really kind of that signifies or signals the strength of it. The Nikkei as well managed to attempt to break out of this range, which you could see here on the monthly, and managed to break out, and then we finished with a weekly failure, this sort of gravestone doji, usually a break of the low that would see us back into the range, back down to the bottom of the range. Let's see if that's going to be the case. Alternatively, we would see it find support. The next candle would be a bullish candle in this area, and that would be it finding support in this range and breaking out and moving upwards after that, but not likely given what I've seen. So again, I want to run through these relatively quickly if I can, and see what we look at here. We've got this bearish reaction off the top for Apple. Amazon also still quite weak in general here, and that downtrend still intact. So I was looking to see if this would ultimately take a move to the upside, and there is nothing there at this time unless it double bottoms in this area. But I don't really expect that to be the case. It looks very bearish, and I would expect this to continue down. So my expectation for now is to see that head a little bit lower. Some of you might be seeing this as the first episode you've ever watched. I've got an ongoing thing where I mark levels that are key. So that's really what's kind of going on here. AT&T, this was a head and shoulders pattern we spoke about. right now kind of looks like it's just continuing to drop lower. It is a downtrend. We've got some bullish candles in there. It's really trying to find support and turn around. But even here on that monthly chart, it looks as though it's range bound and it's going to push lower. ARC, I'm afraid, is going to be pushing lower as well. It's back into this level of support. We've got Glencore, strong gap down and a bullish finish, and still in a monthly uptrend. So I think this week it's a question of, does it finish strong? Can it finish higher? But it also is under pressure. Tesco, also this trend doing okay. Indecision candle here, we might see a break and have it head a little bit lower. So look at this. This is Amex. Just look at that monthly chart. You can see how we sort of struggled in this area, moved back, sort of a double bounce there, bullish candle, move up, and this fairly here, swing high. You could sort of argue that this is a possible head and shoulders. How do we do this again? This one, is that it? And that's the left shoulder. No, let me do this again. So this is sort of it. If that ends up being a bit of a head and shoulders pattern, it would have to kind of break the neckline and continue down from here, which would be frightening. But for now, I think we're fine. But I would expect this certainly to come back down towards these levels this week, following back down into that level of resistance to test that for support. Then we have Berkshire Hathaway, which has got a bearish candle here. Also, look at that sort of failure, that exhaustion on the monthly timeframes. All of this hinting at, especially that if we break those weekly lows, we could see these markets go a bit further. Coca-Cola just going nowhere for 6, 7, 8 weeks. A little bit of indecision here. That looks quite bearish. I think we're falling through that support level, and therefore we could potentially keep going south. Here, same thing again with BP. We're going sideways and a bearish momentum candle. This would usually hint that we'll see the markets head low. So far, I'm looking for anything that doesn't show that. Exxon as well, looking bearish, move to the downside. This is starting to break through support here. Looks way more bearish than bullish. General Motors also very big. So highlighted that move to the upside. This was a bit of an uptrend. We had a bullish candle and highlighted that candle. We didn't even break the high. We've broken the low. And so that shift, and then when you look at it on a monthly time frame, that momentum is shifted. It's very bearish. So yeah, big drop here as well. JP Morgan taking a bit of a hit. And we had a bit of a recovery on Friday, but we're likely to see that continue move low. We've got Adidas. Actually, Adidas coped relatively well given everything else that's going on all these charts. Meta taking a bit of a hit at this level of resistance here, so I think that's going to come back down towards these lows. Maybe they'll finish stronger later on in the week, but I'm not expecting much. That would be a surprise for me, just judging by this strong reaction. Morgan Stanley as well, back into these old highs that have to recover incredibly quickly. And it could well be that that's because of any actions taken to do with SVB, that this is going to be a once-off thing, or that it's been cauterized or contained, and then the markets might recover and be happy. Here I'd look, for example, NVIDIA to come back down to that 207 area if it's going to kick off doing that. Netflix coming back down to these previous lows. Okay, PayPal just couldn't break outside of that bullish area. Strong rejection during the week, and it has pushed a little bit lower, so I think that's going to continue down. Spotify is sort of double topping here, so this is a great example of that bearish divergence. So if you look, we've got this nice little resistance here. We've got a higher high there, but we've got a bearish divergence on that MACD at lower high. And the implication is usually that it certainly is going to fail to go higher, would be a better way of putting it. Spider, big drop to the downside. I mean, it makes sense. Some of these are going to be exposed that way. FedEx holding at that trend line, but also not looking super strong. Tesla actually coped a little bit better. I looked at it earlier. It does look like it's going to continue to go low. It's got a bit of a band here, which could be support or resistance. It's interesting. Look at last month's bullish candle and this month's bearish candle could just be a very strong rejection of those highs we could see. Although this hasn't dropped as far as some of the other charts have done, this could be an indication of a strong rejection and ultimately see this go back down to those lows. That's going to be interesting if that's the case. Vanguard, big, strong, bearish engulfing candle there. Also, bearish candle rejection of this level, followed by another bearish rejection continuation candle. So all of those look as though those markets are set to go lower. And here you can see, I was saying at the beginning that I'd seen bonds jump. So look at this Treasuries. Look at this really strong move there. We've got bullish divergence over here. It's effectively a double bottom in its own ways. So that does to me, that's quite a big move, bigger than I've seen in a while. Plus the bullish divergence to me, I would expect that to continue higher. Certainly attempt to work its way back up into this level where it's battled with resistance. Eurobunt as well did the same thing. So you could see these lows starting to get shallower and shallower, and we've got bullish divergence that would, to me, indicate that it's going to attempt to push higher this coming week. Then we have Bitcoin. So we can see we break to a low. We're currently retracing. I'd be interested to see if we could pull back into this area here, the previous lows, and continue down from there if that's going to be the case. But yeah, it's just not a clear trend on those. None of them have clear uptrends or downtrends. They've broken those trends. We can see Ethereum managed to recover so far from this. It's got a strong level of resistance up here. So that makes it a little bit tougher. We've got Solana downtrend, retracing back up. So this week could see some good continuation, shorting opportunities for traders. Not great for investors, but good for traders to look for those shorting opportunities if they set up according to their strategies. Here, for example, we've got Binance, break it to its level of support. Now it's back under it, and now we're going to see if it finds resistance in that area. Let's see if that's going to be the case. And that is really it from me. I'm going to leave you with this week. Definitely exercise some caution. Yes, the markets could move lower. They could also recover. They could bounce up if the news turns out to be good. And so that's why I'm exercising extra caution. I would certainly not assume that this is going to lead to big moves to the downside unless I see those signals set up in real time. I'm not going to do that. I would rather just say, look, it looks bearish. The outlook is bearish right now, and but I'm still going to trade cautiously with some optimism that if the markets stabilize, we could see a stronger finish later on in the week. But right now, that is looking the least likely or less likely. All right, ladies and gents, thank you very much, and have a great week.